What's up guys, Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we're talking about heavy metal. No, not the music genre. We're talking about these guys right here. Spoons, tail spins, and blade baits. And if you're not throwing them right now, you're leaving fish in the water. Fall bass fishing is all about colder weather, colder water temps, and bait fish. Whether your bass are schooled up on bait fish offshore or in the very backs of cuts and they have them pinned up super shallow, there are ways to fish for them with heavy metal. Now, it might not be this big old Ben Parker spoon. You know, that's more of an offshore summer pattern for me, but it might be a jigging spoon or a little bit smaller flutter spoon. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, I really narrowed it down to some key spoon baits, some key blade baits, and some key tailspin baits, because it's all about flash and all about vibration, right? We're trying to find those active schools of bass that are feeding on bait fish. Like I said, fall, it's all about cooler weather. Water temps are dropping and the bass are active. So throwing these metal baits, having that tight vibration, having that flash and that movement can really trigger these fish into eating, even if they're not active. Now, what's great about fishing in the fall, a lot of times these bass are active. You know, it's one of my favorite, it's probably my second favorite time of the year to fish. I love fishing 12 months out of the year, right? But if I could choose, it would be pre-spawn and then in the fall, when these fish, they're coming out of their summer haunts, they're starting to get active. Some of them are staying offshore, chasing those open water bait balls, and some of them are on the secondary points, on the rock piles, on that key cover. But a lot of them are moving, right? They're in the ditches, they're in the cuts. They're looking to pursue those bait balls that are going shallow, and you can catch them super shallow. So we have some blade baits for you. We got some tail spins. And then if you are one of those guys that's catching them out a little bit deeper, out off the edges or off of the main lake points or out in open water, we have some spoon fishing tips for you. Whether it's a jigging spoon or a flutter spoon, but throwing some kind of heavy metal this time of the year gets it done. So first, let's talk about flutter spoons, right? So these are spoons that are made. It's a big old chunk. It looks like a license plate, right? They are huge. This is the Ben Parker spoon, the Nichols Ben Parker spoon. Caught a lot of giant bass on it. But like I said earlier, this is typically a bait for me that's more during the ledge fishing season. Like out there, summertime, early fall, when those fish are still out there on the ledges. So if you're on one of those fisheries, if you're on the TVA, the Tennessee River, or a fishery where those fish are still offshore, this will come into play. But I have had better luck this time of the year actually downsizing, still throwing that nickel spoon, but this is the a little bit smaller spoon, and it is easier to fish. You don't need like basically a giant spoon rod to throw it. You can throw this on your favorite jig rod. I do like to add a feathered treble on the back, but again, these fish are all about bait. Now, the benefit of throwing the flutter spoon is, unlike a jigging spoon where you can get it down quick, this thing is mimicking a dying bait fish. And these fish, I've had a lot of success this time of the year. If I'm fishing a main lake point where I know those fish are on that main lake point, and when those bait balls come over the top, they come up and ambush them. Sometimes you'll see them actually come all the way up to the surface, and that's when you can catch them on top water. Even though we're getting later into the year, you can still get them on top water. But being able to throw this thing out there, throw it out there, let it fall on semi-tight line, it's doing that dying bait fish fall, and that drives bass crazy. So it doesn't matter if they are active, they're feeding on that bait ball, or they're down on bottom waiting for that bait ball to come over the top. Having this hop off bottom and letting it fall, hop, hop, letting it fall, dong, these fish love eating bait fish this time of the year, and a flutter spoon is an awesome bait to fish in that deeper water scenario, right? This is not something you're gonna fish in like less than 12 foot. You're gonna fish it in that 20 to 30 to 40 foot range and really get this thing down there and really get those fish fired up with that dying bait fish action. A few tips for fishing the flutter spoon. I do add a swivel to the front that helps with line twist, and sometimes I will actually run a free floating or a free running treble hook. So I'll just run my line through the eye of the treble hook, size 2, size 4. It's a stinger hook, and then I will tie onto my swivel. It's a stinger hook, but sometimes they eat this thing head first and it will get them in the mouth. So that's a tip for you if you guys are missing fish on the flutter spoon. But this is a great bait to fish out there in that deeper water. And then if you are on a fishery that has lots and lots of boat docks, deeper boat docks or marinas, this thing is killer right now. Pull up to the edge, the face of that marina, flip this thing back there and let it do its thing. These fish or bass are suspended down. Sometimes they're just a couple feet under the docks. Sometimes they're all the way on bottom, and sometimes they're right in between. But that's what's so good about the flutter spoon. It doesn't fall too quickly, and it's got that real slow dying bait fish action, and these fish will come out of those docks and just absolutely smoke it. So fishing marinas, fishing lots of deeper docks works really well this time of the year, but the flutter spoon is an awesome, awesome bait to be throwing right now. Woo, we got some waves. Now, as far as gear, I have really specific gear for all of these techniques, whether we're talking about a flutter spoon, a jigging spoon, a blade bait, or a tail spin. This guy right here, I like to throw on a 7/6 medium heavy. This is an X-Pride, it's a 7/6 medium heavy, and I have that paired up to a 7 or an 8-to-1 gear ratio reel. Now, I will say I'm only sitting in like 2 feet of water out here on the main channel, but basically you fire this thing out there. You let it fall on semi-tight line, right? You have a bow in your line. Pay attention to that initial fall, especially if you're flipping around these boat docks. You're gonna pull up and let it fall. Let it kind of walk it down. That thing's doing its thing. Pull up, let it fall. If you get on bottom, you can hop it and then let it fall. But this thing works extremely well on that initial fall, and then, you know, that real long pull up stroke, kind of pull it up, let it fall, and it's doing its dying bait fish thing back down to the bottom. But again, I'm throwing that on a 7 to 8-to-1 gear ratio reel. That way, when I do feel that tunk, I can reel down and jack them. And then having that extra long rod, that 7'6", really buries those hooks, has enough backbone and soft enough tip when they do come up and head shake. You don't lose that fish when it's throwing that big flutter spoon out there in front of its face. That's a killer combo for throwing these guys. Again, having that longer rod allows you to make long casts if that's what you're doing out there on that main leg point or secondary point. If you guys are doing that, I like to get shallow and throw out to the deeper water. Let that thing fall through the deep water, rip it up. That way I'm fishing it close to bottom all the way into my cast. If I do it the opposite way, I'm hopping up, I might be coming over like a 5 or 10 foot drop or ledge. Now I got to free spool and really pay more attention, where if you're fishing it uphill or up shallower, deeper water to shallower, you have more of that better bottom contact feel, and you get more bites. So that is the flutter spoon. Again, I'm narrowing it down. Like I said, I like to throw this a lot during the summer months, but this time of the year I like to downsize. For me, my confidence is in that a little bit smaller bait. It seems like these fish are keyed in on that smaller bait. You know, if you're on a herring lake or a gizzard shad lake, you might be able to get away with a little bit bigger spoon. But if you guys are on like a shad fishery or, you know, some smaller bait fish fisheries, that little bit smaller spoon is the way to go. All right, now let's talk about another spoon that basically collects dust for me probably, you know, 6 or 7 months out of the year. We're talking about the jigging spoon. You know, an 1.75 ounce bait. It's made to drop straight down and jig it. And again, it mimics a dying bait fish. These fish are all around these bait balls, but it allows you to fish deeper, quicker. Now, where the jigging spoon shines is out in open water or deeper water. A lot of times this time of the year, as we get into fall, later into fall and into winter, some of these bait balls go deep. I'm talking 30, 40, 50, 60 feet. They get down there and the bass follow them. They're right there with those fish. So I love throwing a jigging spoon. This is something where originally it was called video game fishing. You know, I know there's all sorts of opinions on electronics these days, but the original video game fishing with your 2D sonar, you'd see the arches, right? You drop your spoon down there just above their head and twitch, let it fall. And it's just shooting up off bottom, and it's doing the same thing as the flutter spoon, just a little bit faster. Now, the benefit of throwing this guy is you can vertically fish it a lot quicker, and you can get down to those active schools. We're talking about just 2D sonar. Back in the day when you'd see just the spaghetti or the lasagna, just arch after arch after arch, just stacked on top of each other. You drop this spoon straight down. Tip for you guys, if you thumb it, if you add a little bit of resistance, this thing will shoot down like 30, 40 feet really quickly. So you can get down. When you get down, you're just basically just hopping that rod tip just enough to get this thing to shoot up and then fall, shoot up and then fall, shoot up and then fall. But again, it's targeting these active fish out there in deeper water. So vertical fishing, you know, this is a new color this is the Nichols dust spoon. Again, I throw a swivel on there so I don't have to deal with line twist. I have either straight mono filament as my main line or braid to a mono leader. This is a technique that I don't use fluorocarbon very often because I want to get down quickly and I don't want my bait to foul on the line. So mono really helps with that, has more drag in the water and keeps that hook away from it. But that's an 1.75 ounce bait. Again, feathered treble on there. A tip for fishing these guys. You know, I talked about how you do it. When you pop it up and let it fall, and you pop it up and you hook into them, now you just grind them to the boat. You want to keep that momentum, keep that fish coming to the boat, because when they come out and they have this thing right in their face, and you have that 1.75 ounce out there just flying all over the place, you want to keep that momentum coming towards you, keep that line tight, and get those fish in the boat in a hurry. If you let them jump and do all that stuff, do digs and runs and really play the fish, you're going to end up losing them. So you definitely want a rod that has a soft enough tip that stays loaded during those head shakes, but you want some horsepower, some backbone to get that fish up and get them coming to you. Again, that jigging spoon, that's that Nichols dust spoon. That is an awesome, awesome bait and really shines around standing timber, suspended bass, and deep vertical fishing. You know, letting this thing free fall down there through the schools of bait fish and then hopping it. A lot of times, the bigger fish are going to be underneath the bait ball. You know, a lot of times you'll have the bait ball, you know, you'll have the fish blowing up through it, whether you're looking on side imaging, 2D sonar, forward facing sonar, whatever you're looking at, you'll see the fish coming up. And a lot of times the bigger fish, the lazier ones, are down a little bit lower, just picking off the injured shad or the dying bait fish. So sometimes, you know, you want to keep this above that fish's head, right? So they see it jigging. But a lot of times I'll let this thing crash down to bottom and then reel it up off the bottom just a couple winds and then hop it. So it looks like a dying bait fish down there on bottom. But again, you're vertically fishing it, and it is a killer bait to be throwing all the way through wintertime. Again, this fishes really well in deeper water. Comes in 2 different sizes. I like the 1.75 ounce. I just like to be able to get it down there quickly. And again, being able to, if I just free spool it, but I keep my thumb on the spool, a little bit of resistance, that thing's gonna shoot down to bottom and get down there quickly. If I see those fish come underneath that 2D sonar up front, I'm gonna drop this thing down there right through that lasagna. If you guys don't remember, I'm sure I'm dating myself. I'll try and find an old screenshot of just those stacked fish. Just looks like lasagna, you know, down there in deeper water. But that is the jigging spoon. Now let's talk about the blade bait. So just recently, just my last video, maybe a week or so ago, I did a lipless crankbait video. And I really wanted to include blade baits in that video, but I felt like they needed their own kind of video, because throwing a blade bait, those of you guys that aren't familiar with a blade bait, it is basically a lipless crankbait, but there's no rattle. It's silent. It is literally a chunk of metal. This is actually the Demiki Vault. That is a 1/2 ounce bait. It could be considered a lipless crankbait. It just doesn't have, it's its own category. It's a blade bait. You know, the original Silver Buddy is the bait that made this this technique, this style of bait very, very popular. It is typically considered a cold water technique. You know, as we get into those cooler nights and those water temps start dropping, you know, switching from a lipless crankbait to a blade bait can mean all the difference in the world. I can't tell you how many times I've went behind guys that I can visibly see and hear throwing an LV 500 or a Demiki or not a Demiki, Jackal TN70, and I'll go behind them with the Demiki Vault or the Megabass, the Dyna Response, and pick up those fish, because we know where the fish are. They're just that rattle and that loud commotion can just be too much sometimes. So a blade bait for me is a bait that's tied on, I mean, 10, 11, maybe even 12 months out of the year. It is a very special bait. It's a bait that shines. You fish it just like you would your favorite lipless bait, whether it's thrown out there and reeling it back or yo-yoing it. I'll show you here in a second. But a blade bait really shines on finicky fish or colder water fish. So a blade bait is a must this time of the year. It doesn't matter if you're out there fishing on your main lake point out there in 30 and 40 foot of water, or you're in the very backs of a cut and you're throwing a little itty bitty 1/4 ounce Demiki Vault up there in 6 inches of water. These fish get so shallow, so shallow. They corral these bait fish in the backs of these cuts, in the backs of these pockets. I have this, I'm throwing this on 7-pound straight fluorocarbon. Sometimes I'll throw a braid to a leader. But again, just like the lipless, you're just yo-yoing it. Just like 9 or 10 o'clock to noon, 12 o'clock, just getting that thing vibrating enough that those fish can feel it. They can see that flash and that vibration. But guys, I can't tell you how many giant fish I've caught on a little blade bait, okay? It really shines this time of the year. So like I said, it doesn't matter if you're fishing in 30 or 40 feet of water or 6 inches of water. When these fish are corralling the bait fish, and you'll see them, I've referenced it in so many videos, you'll see them blowing up and you'll see the shad flickering on the shoreline because they are so shallow. These fish will just come up in like killer whales, just shark those bait balls and blow them up onto the shore. Being able to get a bait up there super shallow and do that yo-yoing, that technique is so special, and it shines really, really well this time of the year. So when these bass are relating to bottom, they have those fish corralled, or you're fishing that main lake point, or you're fishing that key cover out there off that main lake point in cooler water, that Demiki, that little blade bait is really, really special. Now that Demiki Vault comes in like 4 different sizes. A 1/4 ounce, comes in a 3/8, a 1/2, a 3/4. You know, here's the 3/4 right here. I just showed you guys the little 1/4 right there. I do some key upgrades on this bait specifically. If I'm throwing a little 1/4 ounce, I'm changing out the hooks to a number. That's a number 10. That's the Owner ST36. It's a size 10. It's a 1X hook, sticky, sharp. But I just like upgrading. I have better hook to land ratio with upgraded hooks on that Vault. If I'm going with the larger size, you know, now you can get into, you know, 6s or 8s. I really like the that's the STX 38. It's a 1 X plus, a little bit more stout of a hook. So if you're fishing around larger fish, and then the Gammy, just the EWG, that's a killer hook as well. But that Vault is an amazing blade bait. It's my favorite to throw all the way now into winter. As we get cooler weather, that's when I will switch over to this guy right here. That's the Megabass Dyna Response. No need to upgrade these hooks. They come out with awesome hooks out of the package, and you can see it has kind of that tinsel tail. So that really kills that real wide action. It slows the fall. So as you get into cooler weather, cooler water temps, that Megabass, that Dyna Response that's what I go to from the Damiki Vault. It's kind of that 1-2 punch. But the colder water you get into, the less or shorter hops that you give this bait, right? You don't want to give it too much action when you're fishing this thing. You can hop it, let it fall, let it sit there, let it fall. Again, these fish, I mean, we've caught them in freezing conditions. They'll just come over and just hammer this guy right here. But that is an awesome bait to be throwing this time of the year. So we talked about spoons. We talked about flutter spoons and jigging spoons. We talked about blade baits. Okay, blade baits, let's talk about the gear real quick. I'll link all the stuff down below in the video description. If I'm throwing, here's that 1/2 ounce Damiki Vault. Again, I change out the hooks. Those are those ST 38s. More importantly, I also change out the rings on the larger size. It's just, again, I take that snap off and I put a number 3 split ring on there. You can get away with number 2 split rings, owner hypo wires for the actual hooks themselves. And then again, a little key tip on the Vault, there's 3 holes. When you buy this bait out of package, there's a snap on it and there's 3 holes right there. See that package on the back? Again, I'll link all the stuff down below on the video description, but it says right here, front hole, place the quick snap in the front hole for maximum action when vertical jigging. Middle hole, use this hole when fishing flats, banks, or schooled fish, a medium to fast retrieve. That is where I keep it. I literally throw it in the middle all the time. And then last but not least, the rear hole. To use this, gives maximum vibration on slower retrieves. I don't really mess with it. I actually go with where that snap is out of package, that middle hole. That has always been the best for that yo-yoing technique. Again, I'm firing this thing out there, I'm letting it hit bottom, and I'm just feathering it just like your favorite lipless crankbait. As far as gear, on the blade baits, I'm throwing braid to either a fluorocarbon, like a 12 to a 16 pound fluorocarbon leader. Seagar Gold Label is amazing. Or if I'm fishing around wood, that's when I'll go with a mono leader, and that just kind of fishes around, has more abrasion resistance. But for the most part, braid to leader. That's at St. Croix. That is the carbon cranker. That is an awesome lipless crankbait rod and 1/2 ounce or bigger blade bait rod. And then for the smaller stuff, guys, this is a killer combo. This is that little Damiki Vault, the 1/4 ounce. Again, upgraded number 2 hyperwire split rings, and then number 10 owner ST 36s, little itty bitty hooks right there. You can even go with a 12 and a 10 if you want. They're a little bit smaller than stock, but those things are sticky sharp and they get the job done. Again, 7 pound fluoro. That's a Bait Finesse reel. That is the PX by Daiwa. And then this rod right here, this is the Dobbins. It's in the Sierra series. This is a 701. So it's a 7 foot 1 power. And this thing, it launches the bait. And when you hook these fish, it loads up. It's got a soften up tip that you don't pull those hooks out. But this is an awesome little combo to be throwing the little blade baits. All right. As far as tailspins, now where do tailspins kind of come into play in this whole heavy metal game, right? Flutter spoons, active fish close to bottom. Jigging spoons, active fish on bait balls close to bottom. Blade baits, obviously you're hopping it, whether it's in 6 inches of water or 40 feet of water. Now, if you find yourself in a scenario where you're fishing a river system with a big bluff wall, you know, you come off 5 feet off the wall and all of a sudden you're in 40 or 50 feet. A lot of times those fish will be sitting on those bluff walls. Being able to drop that tail spin, we're talking about this guy right here, a tail spin. This is a 3/4 ounce bait with a Colorado blade that spins. It's like a helicopter. As that thing falls, that tail is down there just spinning and thumping, flashing and vibrating. This is a bait that is extremely versatile. You can hop it on bottom like a blade bait, although I like to slow swim it, kind of get that bait out there. You can chuck it a long ways because they're heavy, and then you can just reel it. So this really comes into play if you are chucking and winding around active fish that are up off bottom. If those bait balls are, you know, 10 or 15 feet down over 30 or 40 foot, chucking and winding this thing, it gets down quickly, so you can get it down to the depth you want, that 10, 12, 15, 20 feet, whatever it may be, and then you can just reel it. Or you can do that kind of pump and pull retrieve. So let this thing, almost like you're fishing that flutter spoon. It's the cool thing about the tail spin is on the fall, it's swimming down. You know, that flutter spoon is a dying bait fish. It's changing direction. It's doing all sorts of different movements. This thing is just dropping straight down with that big blade vibrating. And if you're on a highland reservoir, clear water, deeper water, spotted bass, this thing is a killer. That is, again, that's the Jackal Daracoup. But suspended fish chasing bait is where this thing really comes into play. I look for busting fish, you know, the same fish that you would throw your top water to. You see them come up, you launch this thing out there, and then you just start swimming it through that school. You can pump it, drop it, but the benefit of this tail spin, it's heavy, it gets down there to them, you can cast it a long ways, and the active fish just smoke this thing. You can fish this through those schools, unlike you know, the flutter spoon or the jigging spoon. So again, that's that Jackal Daracoup. Again, having that free spinning tail, a ton of flash, a ton of vibration. It's a heavy bait in a small package. So again, whether you're fishing that bluff wall, you're fishing that out off that main lake point where those fish are out there busting or schooling, or you're fishing in the backs of you're going up to a creek channel and you're fishing the guts, you can hop this thing, let this hop and swim down the guts. This thing works extremely well. One other tail spin, I do upgrade the hooks on that as well. Again, I'll link this stuff down below in the video description. That is just a size, that's a number 4. It's the STX 38. Again, just a 1X plus, a little bit heavier wire of a hook. Sticky sharp, but a little bit heavier, more stout of a hook, just because I'm fishing around bigger fish. You can get away with an ST36 or a Gamakatsu EWG, totally up to you. But the other one that I want to talk about, that is the Demiki Axe Blade. What's cool about this bait, just like the Daracoup, it's heavy, you can cast it a long ways, but it actually has a built-in stinger hook on the blade. You know, some of these fish, they are crazy aggressive, and sometimes as you're throwing that tail spin, you'll feel the dunk, nothing, dunk, dunk, nothing, but they're hitting the blade. You guys have probably experienced that with an underspin. So being able to have that stinger hook on the blade, if they just hit that blade, you still have that hook back there to get them. But the Axe Blade, again, this is more of a chuck and wind bait for me. This is another bait that it catches those aggressive offshore fish. You know, those fish that are schooling on bait. That chuck and wind. Did you really just throw a bait in the water? But that Axe Blade is another killer presentation for these offshore active fish. Now, the reason I gave you 2 That Daracoup has that big thumping Colorado blade, where this axe blade has a tight thumping willow blade. So one day they'll want one day they'll want the other, but either way, having some kind of tail spin is a must this time of the year. Again, it's super easy. Chuck and wind like your favorite swim bait or spinner bait. Do that pumping technique through that school, or throw it out there, let it hit bottom, let it hit bottom, pop it up, and just swim it along close to bottom. Because it's heavy, it gets down and it stays down. Again, those bigger fish tend to stay under that school on those bait fish, but a tail spin works extremely well. Again, those different retrieves will work for you. Change up between those two, the Daracoup and the axe blade, and you guys will catch a lot of fish all the way through winter. That's what's cool about these baits. All of these baits, for the most part, I might get away from the flutter spoon, but the jigging spoon, the tail spin, and the blade bait, that's gonna work all the way through into pre-spawn, into early spring. They're just killer baits that'll produce all the way into winter. So I wanted to talk to you guys about throwing metal this time of the year. You know, it's so crazy because we, as bass fishermen, we get caught up on this specific color of worm or this specific color of jig, and then we're throwing big old chunks of metal and they eat it. So it's just a funny world out there, but it does matter. That's that Shattered Glass color by Nichols. That is a killer color. Again, I'll link all this stuff down below in the video description. But guys, if you're not out throwing a version or a style of these three techniques, you guys are missing out. You guys are leaving fish in the water. You're not getting as many bites as you could be. So hopefully that gives you the confidence to get out there and try these baits. A blade bait, a tail spin, and a spoon. Whether it's a jigging spoon or a flutter spoon, they produce fish all the way through winter. Guys, if you have any questions, please leave those down below in the comment section. I will try to get those as soon as possible. But I appreciate the support. If you guys learned something from this video or you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and down below in the video description, I want to hear your guys' favorite heavy metal baits that you guys like to throw. Your favorite confidence baits. Give me one or two, and I like to hear from you guys. But as always, thanks for the support, and we will see you guys on the next video.